And Claude, with your area of practice, I'm just wondering what might be the possible impacts of Western-dominated view of art history, and what might be the economic implications of that in terms of the art and business matrix.
Yeah, it's a really important aspect of this art market and valuing art and appreciating art. And I want to start with perhaps again another personal narrative to really talk about why I do these things and why I've been harping on about these things for so many years. And again, it started with, as it does for many of us, with other childhood experiences. So in the way that I described this passion for hip hop and how I was so simpatico with the hip hop point of view, I also, growing up in Paris, had also deep interest in the art world, in the sense of I just loved going to museums on my own, just discovering museums and discovering art. And of course, one of the things that struck me was, again, when I'd go to these museums in Paris, I just wouldn't see anybody who looked like me in a position of power. So again, the Black people I'd see would be maids or domestic workers. And that was the same when I moved to London and started going to the Natural Portrait Gallery. British Museum, of course, is another example. And then even in the US with the MoMA and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it just was so shocking that we just weren't representing in our full glory in the way that we should be. And so one of the reasons I decided to become a media guy and a mediator in a sense is because I just felt that there might be a new generation of artists and practitioners who could help to elevate the game by really showing the beauty and creativity of Black people now. And in a sense, the way that we get to the art market is by talking about how a new generation of artists has emerged in the last 15 to 20 years who really are at the top of their game and who really do get respected as they should. And so for me, I just want to speak about one specific artist who's had a huge influence on me because I've known him for a long time, and that would be Kehinde Wiley. I always talk about Kehinde, and we always joke that we're twins because we share the same birthday, February 28th, and we have so much in common above and beyond just the diastema, the gap between our teeth. And we share a lot in common because I remember when he was coming to New York and trying to have a voice in that New York art world and not being taken seriously or being taken advantage of by quote unquote collectors who just realized that he needed the money. But the way that he was able to subvert the shame of what I saw in these museums by really just putting Black people in an environment where they were totally glorified, they were heroic, they had status, and these young African-American men that he'd meet in the street, they would be replacing figures in the figurative paintings of Tiepolo, for instance, or these great Renaissance painters, and he would just totally subvert what I'd been seeing in museums and putting him in a very contemporary setting. And that really inspired me so much because I felt that he was so bold, and that was another form of radical action. And his success, continued success, all the way to the portrait of Barack Obama and everything he's been doing ever since, even kind of dealing with a lot of the Confederate iconography in the South with some of his latest exhibitions, has really helped me to think through how specific individuals can help to change the way that we're perceived as people and the way that the art market values us. And so I mentioned Kehinde Wiley, but I can mention so many other artists who have, again, just really dealt with post-colonial history, have dealt with the history of slavery, and just try to create something beautiful and timeless in this world of suffering and this world of systemic racism. And so the way that Yinka Shonibari perhaps was doing it in the UK, coming in as a British Nigerian, I feel like there's so many similarities with the way Kehinde does it as an African, as a Nigerian American, a Nigerian African American, whatever we might call him. And so these kind of transcultural leanings about reinventing a new history that will be a lot more respectful to the enormous work that our ancestors did back in the times of the Dogon Empire, of the Benin Empire, of these great kind of West African empires, that to me is a way to redress the balance and create value in the art world where people can actually appreciate it without it being perceived as a kind of knee-jerk reaction to, oh, the Black people feel they should have a voice too.